So the claim today I'm going to be responding to is the outcomes of animal testing are not beneficial, and then just like off your general knowledge, you already know that that's false. Like, why would we be doing animal tests if that was not beneficial? Like, basically we're just torturing animals, and that's not the case. So my opponent's first secondary claim is that animal testing is bad science. The second one would be there are more effective and cheaper methods than animal testing, and the third would be animal testing hurts and harms innocent animals. So my response to the first claim that animal testing is bad science, I'm going to say that animal testing is not all bad science. Like before they start animal testing, they go through a process called systematic reviewing, and what that basically is that like they gather evidence or information from like other places that have done animal testing to see like what animals they should use, like what like matches a human, like how like it functions and whatnot. And then this one person named Joris van Drongelen from the Radboud University Medical Center, he was conducting an experiment, and he used this process called systematic reviewing, and he chose like specific rats that demonstrated functions that would correlate well to a human. And a quote here from him is that the animal model chosen will depend on the goal of the experiment. So it's not just random, like they choose animals and see if it works or not. They actually have to go through a process and see which one will work well with that experiment. And then my response to the secondary claim, which is that there are more effective and cheaper methods than animal testing. This is not really true because there are not alternatives for all kinds of animal testing. This one guy named Raja Mangapudi, author in Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology, he describes that there's these vitro systems, which are like vessels that would mimic a human body. They're not advanced enough to replace animal testing. So like they won't really like replicate what a human or a living organism would do because it's not that advanced yet. And then so my opponent said that it's cheaper, and then I'm pretty sure like creating a vitro system, a vessel with all those organs like to replicate a human, that would not be cheaper than just buying a rat, you know? Like that is not right at all. And then like effective wise, yeah, like this experiment was like trying to measure like the toxicity level of the medicine being used, and then there's a quote here from him that says the experiment would falsely predict negatives for unique toxicities that result from complexities not replicated within the in vitro test system, and then like our only way to do is like do animal testing to test out if it works or not. Okay, and then my response to the secondary claim is that animal testing, or her claim was that animal testing hurts and harms innocent animals. And then although this is true, animal testing still is necessary. A guy named Andrew Huxley of Trinity College, he states that without testing on animals, like development of like new drugs for human and like animals themselves, we won't be able to test them, like what would happen. So the only other option would be to test them on humans, and I'm pretty sure you would not want to do that. No one would sign up for that, and or to just put them on the market without having any testing done. Or we just continue testing on animals, but like do it in like a humane way. So basically, before they test the substance, they have to go through like a series of screening tests. So basically, let's say for example, they would try to test a substance for the eye. First, they would have to like see if that substance would actually be harmful to the skin, and if it proves not to be harmful, they would move on to a second test. So, and the second test would be they would have to test it on like an eye they obtained from like a donor or something. And then if that passes that test and shows no harm to that specific eye, they would have to test it on one animal, and then like depending on how the animal responds, if it responds positively, and then they would continue to test it on other animals. So they try to minimize the amount of hurt and harm it causes these animals, which makes the animal testing like it is bad in a way, but not necessarily, because it's for the greater good, and no way we could test medicine without it. And that is fine.
Okay, it's fairly easy to follow. On the first point, you basically have a claim that says that this is essential, that the alternatives that are being suggested are not actually going to work. We need systemic research, that the animal models kind of depend on specific kinds of research, and that you can't get that any other way. You've got this whole explanation about systemic reviewing, but I think it needs to be a little bit clearer. Is this a system that is required by all animal researchers, everybody who does research using animals? Are they taking a general piece of information and applying it in a particular way to every new test that they're doing? It was a little unclear as to how that addresses that first issue of it being bad science. The idea that animal testing still produces valuable outcomes and research is not really discussed in much detail there. On the second point, this is where you're arguing that the alternatives don't really work very well, and you've got stuff that says the in vitro, even though it mimics some systems, it's not the same thing, and that there would be probable issues that we would not be able to detect. I thought you did a pretty good job on that. I do think that you have a tendency, though, on these points to be paraphrasing the claims of the research that you're looking at instead of directly quoting it. And one of the problems is that because you're not using the direct quote, it doesn't sound to me like your inference is as clear as it should be either. So you want to be careful about that. On the third point, you basically acknowledge that obviously animals are sometimes injured or damaged in the process of doing the testing, but you mostly argue that this is necessary in order to get these results. And you've got some examples and hypotheticals that are going into place here. I understand that. And I kind of get this idea about how the process of testing works, that now we're getting more of an explanation of what you mean by systemic reviewing processes of the animal tests. But how does that address the issue of whether or not the animals are harmed? I don't know. It just feels like it peters out at the end of the speech. Also, you don't really have a very clear exit line, so I think you need to be a little bit more assertive on some of the claims that you're making. All right, thank you.